The joke was on me this week. I've been trying to make Doc quit comic books by making him read the very worst comic books I can think of. This week, there was a comic book called Rockstar and Softboy, written and illustrated by Sina Grace. If that wasn't enough, I could see that Sina Grace was a self-insert character on the cover. I was like, if there's anything that will bend Doc's will and finally make him admit that he doesn't like comics anymore and just quit the medium, it was going to be this comic book. I may have done it to myself. It was that bad. We're also going to talk about Harley Quinn number 12. This is the worst creative pairing in all of comic books. Stephanie Phillips and Riley Rossmo. It gets no worse than this. And here with me to talk about that is the man that's still standing strong while I am struggling to keep up with comic books, and even my will to keep reading it's been compromised. Let's put it that way. We've got Doc, the Marvel aficionado himself, the X-Men historian. How you doing, Doc?
You wily coyote yourself, sir.
Yes, this comic book was a stick of Acme Dynamite and it blew up in my face.
Correct, because somehow, some way, I managed to finish this fucking comic book, and you could not. Now, granted,
I think I made it 8 pages, maybe. It was bad. This is rough.
I will admit that there were pages where I just had to skim, and like it was not a good comic book by any stretch.
Sina Grace is one of the worst writers I've ever read in my life, and his Iceman is two runs that he had there speak for themselves. They are infamous for their low quality storytelling and over the top, really negative stereotypes about gay culture. He's also written what I consider to be the worst Green Lantern story in modern times. It was in the Green Lantern 80th anniversary special. He's got the very last story. It is just putrid. So we get what in this Image comic, it's called Rockstar and Softboy. We basically get Sina Grace unchained, I guess. And he gets to tell the story that he really wants to. And you could see, as bad as Iceman was, it would have been so much worse without any type of interference to kind of rein this guy in. It opens up with the most fucking pretentious comic writing trope. I fucking hate this stuff. On the left, Sina Grace is Rockstar. On the right is, can be any ethnic diverse character, is Softboy, whatever his stand-in friend's going to be. And it just runs down this whole list of pretentious, stupid things. Of course, they're two men, handbags or heels. They both have an answer. What's your favorite starter Pokemon? This is the worst character introduction you can do in the industry. And we got 2 of them.
I understand when superhero comics that drop you kind of in situ and you don't know who these characters are. So you don't know what their powers are. When they went to I'm going to tell you the back of their trading card, but always had to add a bunch of cutesy nonsense to it. That's when it started getting stupid. And this time, all it was cutesy nonsense.
This character Rockstar, which is essentially Sina Grace, I believe this is him, but dialed up to 20. He is the most insufferable fucking person in the world. This is who I think Sina Grace is after reading this comic book. And I bet you he doesn't have a friend in the world that isn't specifically friends with him just because he's gay. Like, well, he's gay. We're gay. I guess we have to be friends with him. Otherwise, I would never fucking talk to the guy because he's insufferable. I didn't know that you could do this, Doc, but he has actually managed to illustrate a character that walks gay.
Yeah. I mean, more power to him.
You know what's really weird about this? If you look at that character, and he's certainly walking pretty gay, is when you look at him, he looks like Jordan White, the editor of the X-Men, who he would have kind of worked with in the past probably, but with no hair on his head.
This one's not that far off. And it's kind of weird. And I kept wondering whether or not Jordan White's pajamas had a trap door in the back.
Yes, they do. You can see it clear as day in the illustration. You probably didn't notice because he was walking so gay. You're just like, that is a gay sachet. But there's really a trap door back there. Absolutely.
And probably because I really, really, really did not want to look at gay walking man's butt.
This was a terrible introduction just to the comic book, but somehow it actually manages to get worse because Rockstar has boned this dude who works with Softboy, like their colleagues. And this is what Softboy has to say. You hooked up with Seth, my coworker. It could get so awkward if you two start dating or had a bad breakup. And Rockstar, Sina Grace, says, okay, firstly, you freelanced together at the game company 3 months ago. Your colleagues, not co-workers. And secondly, Seth's a full-time bottom and Vertigo. You know I need the full sexual menu and astrobiological compatibility for romance. Like, what the fuck is?
This was this was like take every horrible stereotype about gay people and somehow women, mash them into these characters. I'm waiting for him to start bringing out like his crystals and talking about his essential oils in the middle of this. I'm like, what in the fuck am I reading here? This is
What is
like,
what
I
is
understand
wrong with Image Comics. Like, Image Comics is the third largest American publisher of comic books, traditional comic books. There's a place for this story, and it's called like underground gay comics. Apparently,
Fantagraphics.
why would Image even decide to publish this? Is this what they want their brand to be? This is terrible dialogue. It's a really weird story, and you can't. If you or I wrote a comic book like this, and you were talking about a female character that the lead male hooked up with, like, Image would never publish that because they would think it was disgusting.
They would think that it was horribly sexist and stereotyping and like lowest common denominator. This is terrible, and it's offensive to me, and it takes a lot to offend me.
If this dickhead showed up like at the family reunion, he would be fucking booed out of the building and told to leave by his fucking family. That's how completely obnoxious and fucking hateful this person is. This is where I stopped reading the book. This is what old Softboy has to say. I don't know, like 9 months. I've been busy focusing on getting material ready for the game's Kickstarter. 9 months without so much as a blowy or a handy job. If you were Ace, that would be fine, but you're just as much a slag as me. So this is a problem. No wonder this game's like pulling teeth. You need to get plowed, like deeply dicked by a dong that fucks the inspiration in your guts back to that beautiful brain of yours. I almost destroyed my tablet. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Nobody talks like this.
If they do, they don't have friends. No one wants to hang out with them. They certainly don't have a normal roommate like old Softboy here who just seems like a normal guy that wants to make a fucking video game.
Yeah,
he's the part that I read. I didn't get too far into the story. This is where I quit.
Yeah, it's
There's
like
another 30 pages, I believe, that you had.
Yeah, there is. And fuck you for making me read them. Because if he doesn't see anything wrong with this Rockstar guy's completely obnoxious and generally toxic worldview and behavior, maybe he needs to do a little more introspection, because this is his obvious self-insert.
There's no way Sina Grace has real friends in his life, because if he's this fucking obnoxious, everybody that's ever met him hates his fucking guts. Because even if this character was dialed down to 10, you would still fucking hate him. Did the comic book get better, Doc? Like I said, I couldn't finish it. You braved through it. You are a braver soul than I. I almost quit comics forever because of this.
It got dumber is what it happened. They throw a party, and they throw a house party, and apparently the Rockstar has a formula for how to throw this party. He's got to have zombies and vampires and witches and sorcerer stew, because apparently, like, he's like Disco Stew, but for sorcery. And they unleash this thing called the party animal, and then they have to dress up like, they have to use their superpowers, which apparently they have, because we find out early that they had killed fucking giant crab things. They get magical girl, like Sailor Moon powers, to fight off the party animal that looks like just a normal looking dude that's kind of a wolf dressed like a normal, like, kind of 20s hipster guy. And
whatever. That's you've given enough details.
Fucking awful. Yes.
I don't recommend this comic book. I don't know if this is the worst comic book I've read in the last few years. Batgirl 50 was really, really bad. There's a few of them in there that were just terrible, terrible comic books. This is right there, though. This is about as bad as it gets.
Yeah, this is a terrible comic, and there may be an audience for it. It's definitely not me. It's not you. It's probably nobody that would even consider watching this channel. So
there's no audience for this. This is an underground comic that you distribute, in LA or LA and San Francisco, or maybe New York or something, where you have a large gay community that might appreciate and get a giggle out of this. But I would tell you right now, I think the vast majority of gay people I know would read this and say, this is the worst fucking thing I've ever read in my life. And I find it offensive. The troubling negative stereotypes that are being put out in this comic book by Sina Grace, who shapes himself as some type of gay activist. Now let's get over Harley Quinn from DC Comics. This isn't nearly as bad. Fuck, if you're going to read one of these comics, you read Harley Quinn. And I think this has the worst creative team in all of comic books. Stephanie Phillips, Riley Rossmo, one of the worst fucking artists that you're going to find at DC and Marvel. Stephanie Phillips, one of the worst writers. They've come together to create the perfect storm of shitty creative team. Harley Quinn. And this comic book is it's just awful. I'm sorry I subjected you to this again. This is issue number 12. And this probably has the worst opening I've ever seen in a comic book in my life.
Yeah,
They set up the stakes, Doc. There's a train. Harley's on the train and she's been tied down. And then Kevin, the guy with the ball sack chin, he's been tied to the train tracks. And the train is going to run over him and blow up. And he's going to die if Harley doesn't free herself and defuse the bomb. So she's imagining what other heroes would do, and she frees herself and she gets underneath the train and she finds the bomb, and there's not enough time. So she jumps off the train into the water, and the train still blows up, but Kevin doesn't die. It's like, what was the point of this?
Well, I felt like when she did that, she intentionally set off the bomb early so it would blow up before it got to Kevin. I don't understand how it blowing up 10 feet away was going to help. Kevin should be dead. This would have been better again if the villain in this comic was Wile E. Coyote. It would have been
Perhaps,
more.
but it would have been better if maybe she saved the day and found a way to save the character, but instead jumped off the bridge to let old Kevin die, and he just didn't die because apparently there were never any stakes in this comic to begin with.
Maybe. I couldn't figure out what
it's just so random, Doc. So random comic special from Stephanie Phillips.
It's a conflict-averse writer writing a story with no real conflict. Nothing has to happen. If it has the problem of if you take the main character out, absolutely nothing in this comic changes. If Harley Quinn is not in this comic book, the entire plot turns out the exact same way. So,
they don't even defeat the villain. They just kind of yell at him and then they say he's not worth their time.
Well, the other henchmen that were former Joker henchmen that apparently went from Blaine to Anna because reasons, those characters like beat up the villain, this whatever the fuck keepsake character is. Harley just kind of shows up at the end and asks them, hey, don't kill keepsake. Okay.
We're better off without him. We're too good for him. Let's go.
And then they don't kill keepsake.
He doesn't deserve justice.
Yeah, nothing, literally nothing in this comic changes if Harley does not appear. Kevin still gets out. Oh, the only thing that happens is she cuts the rope on Kevin's that's tying him to the train tracks. But I'm pretty sure Kevin
blew up.
Yeah, after the train blew up. But no. So Kevin would still be just kind of laying there, like waiting for somebody to find him. And
Coyote would have chewed him off. That's their most significant contribution to a comic book with her name on it. That's pathetic. And that's kind of the way I feel about Stephanie Phillips writing. Like, it's hard to talk about how bad Harley Quinn is once you read a comic book like Rockstar and Softboy, because it really puts in perspective just how bad Harley Quinn maybe isn't. It could be so much worse if Sina Grace was writing it.
Yeah. Once you think you're already at the bottom and somebody shows you the sub bottom,
sub-bottom, huh?
Yeah, you're welcome. That definitely is appropriate.
I think Sina Grace already showed me what the sub-bottom was. It looks like Jordan White, apparently.
I'm pretty sure you're correct. Look, if you were a fan of superhero comics and Harley Quinn, you should be terribly offended. You would think that it was being written by somebody that hates superhero comics and Harley Quinn. And if you were, I don't know, gay and you read Softboy and Rockstar, you'd think it was being written by somebody that hates gay people. So I have no idea. It's like a bunch of shit being written by people that hate what they're writing. Great job.
Yeah, it's really, really, really strange. This is a really, really bad week. I mean, if we make it to the end of the year and this isn't, that Rockstar and Softboy comic isn't on my top 10 worst comics, if it isn't in the top 3, be unfathomable. That would mean we had probably the worst year in comics ever, because this thing was fucking atrocious. That's what I got to say about that, Doc. If you were unaware, Sina Grace is still getting work at DC Comics. If you'd like to see the video I made talking about Sina Grace and the way that DC Comics are not only shoving Sina Grace, but other exceptionally untalented writers down our throats, making us pay for stories that we never would have paid for on our own. Definitely check out this video because DC Comics are doing some really shady shit to make you pay for some really, really bad comic book writers.
You said shoving Sina Grace down your throat.
I should have went.